I think hearing her talk about it with such deep passion, empathy, and knowledge, I think really for him, seeing her talk about it informed that idea of never again and passing it on to generation, and which is such a Jewish thing anyway. I mean, the whole oral law of the Torah is passed down through verbal communication, right? And so it's such a intrinsic part of being Jewish is retelling our stories. And so I think to hear his granddaughter retell his story with such poise and grace and passion was really moved him.
If you heard what I heard, this podcast shares the powerful stories of Holocaust survivors, told by their grandchildren, the last generation to ever hear Holocaust survivor stories firsthand. So join me as we listen, learn, and remember. Together, we can make sure the world will never forget so that it never happens again. Today, I'm honored to be here with my friend, If You Heard What I Heard interviewee, advisor, Hollywood makeup artist, and mom of three, Molly R. Stern, who shares the story of her grandparents, Frank and Magda Stern, for If You Heard What I Heard. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for being here. So, fun fact, Molly, how did we meet? We met through our dear mutual friend, Kelly Adderton, who we love.
Yes, we do.
We love
her
Kelly.
so much. Over Zoom during the pandemic.
Yes, we did. And I don't know how it came up. It was like in our prep call for this Zoom that we were running called the Adderton Roundtable that we were doing with Kelly. And I think you had mentioned something about like your dad is a Holocaust survivor.
I love mentioning it. I love throwing it out there wherever I can.
I mean, he's truly incredible, like such an inspiration and a light in our organization for sure.
A light in the world for sure.
In the world, 100%. He's amazing. Both of your parents are amazing, as is your whole family.
Thank you.
But you mentioned it, and I was like just starting to work on If You Heard What I Heard. I mean, it was like not that far into COVID lockdowns and everything was on Zoom. And when I started If You Heard What I Heard, I really was like, who do I know that's the grandkid of Holocaust survivors? And I reached out to you because I remembered that in this like Zoom prep that we were doing, you had mentioned that your dad was a Holocaust survivor. And I thought maybe Molly's kids would want to share their story, you know, your dad's story. And then you were like, you know, I'm actually a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors too. And so before we had anything as an organization, like we hadn't even launched yet, you and your daughter Vivian really took a chance on us as this no name, nothing. We weren't a nonprofit. We had nothing. It was just an idea. And you guys were so brave to share your story with us. So it feels like forever ago, right?
Yeah, it does feel like forever ago, but it was also like not even a question. It was a no-brainer. I feel so lucky to be a descendant of Holocaust survivors and to be the daughter of a Holocaust survivor that I feel like whenever it's even slightly appropriate in any scene that I'm in, I'm constantly interjecting that information because I think it's it's so important for people to actually see our lineage of survival in the flesh. So I like to mention, like, I am a human being that is actually related to people who went through that experience. Yeah. It's not some like weird floofy story that exists somewhere else in time. It's like a real part of my DNA in life.
And even with that, like you still had a decent amount of prep that you did to share your grandparents' story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mostly knew my father's story, even though my grandfather did write a manuscript that I've never fully made it through, even at this point in my life. But it was really meeting you and your inspiration to actually get more details and actually talk to my dad and interview him about the stories that he grew up knowing about his parents that he could then relate to me. I totally owe it to If You Heard What I Heard for actually going beyond, my dad's a Holocaust survivor. Yeah, my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. It was almost like a soundbite for me, just as part of my history, not callously, but just like it was a part of my history. But I,
Yeah,
I, I was never really a great student, Carolyn, and I never really did a lot of studying. I'm more of a
I
creative
get
type.
it.
I'm a creative
I
type.
get it.
So I never really did the history work on it until meeting you and having the platform of if you heard what I heard to do it.
Well, I say all the time, like we don't engage in like training, right? Like I don't believe in like that there's a training and there's a box and there's a mold that you have to fit in to tell the story, right? That's not our jam. Our deal is like I want to give you the tools so that you can go and get the information or find the information or ask the questions to make the story your own. Like it really is about just like digesting the story for yourself so that you can tell it in the way that you want to tell it. Like it's not my story to tell, it's your story to tell. So I'm happy that we were able to help in that way. But did you learn anything new that you didn't know previously, like when you were prepping for your interview?
For sure. I mean, I learned about all the near misses that I hadn't really ever gotten the details of. Learned about where my grandfather went during the war because he was part of the Russian Guard and the Hungarians that were forced to kind of be the frontline soldiers. So, like, if there was a bomb or something, the Jews would blow up before the Russians would. And yeah, there was a lot of details that I learned about that I never really knew in diving in and kind of forcing the conversation with my dad.
Wow. What was that like for you to learn all these new details, especially now? I think for a lot of us, like when we're growing up or we have a school project, we ask the questions. But like now as an adult to like revisit it, you have 3 kids. What was that like to learn all of that information at this stage of your life?
Yeah, I mean, it really sort of enriched my gratitude and identity as a survivor. It really cemented the fact that I knew being vocal and proud about my Judaism and about my coming from survivors. It became even more important to me that I use my voice and talk about it and be proud and forthcoming about it. Which I always was. I just didn't, I don't think I necessarily had a lot of conscious thought behind it. I was always very proud about being Jewish and obviously, you know, I love my dad, very proud of my dad. I'm very lucky. I have a great relationship with him and I always have. But I think through learning the story and sharing the story through, if you heard what I heard, it just sort of made me more of a conscious survivor instead of it, like I said before, kind of just being a soundbite that I sort of threw around. It suddenly took on a lot of more of a deeper meaning and a deeper commitment to want to do the work of making sure that people really do remember what happened. And especially in these insane times that we're living through right now, it's become more important than ever that we remind people what humanity is capable of doing and ignoring.
So, with that, like we filmed your interview, it was 2020. Like it was so far, like well before October 7th and the rise of anti-Semitism that we've seen since then. And so, like, I mean, you and your family have been such a huge part of our organization, growing our organization, representing our organization. You went to the BBYO National Convention a few years ago on our behalf and represented for us. And your dad spoke with these Jewish teenagers about his experience, which was super cool. And Vivian, your daughter, won an incredible award there. We've had some magical moments of you being involved in our organization that we are very grateful for and hope will continue for many, many years.
Yes.
But with that, having been involved in our organization and having shared the story, like how have things changed for you? Or how has the story maybe taken on the story of what your grandparents went through and what your dad went through taken on a different meaning with everything that we're seeing today?
Well, strangely enough, like when things really started to go nuts, I remember calling my dad, like, Dad, what do you make of this? What do you think? How shocked are you? Type of thing. And he was so very almost like cavalier about it. He was like, yeah, this is how it is. And it was the first time I really understood what it meant to be born during the Holocaust, to have his parents fight for their lives during the Holocaust, for his father to be a concentration camp survivor. Like, it is literally part of my father's, he was literally born into the ideology that that there are people that think the Jews need to be exterminated. And so he doesn't carry a lot of shock and awe that I think, I mean, I've talked about this a couple of times. I think our generation, we were kind of living in a bubble before
Yeah.
October 7th, and really thinking that the world had, that this terrible tragedy had happened to our people and our family and our lineage, and that people understood that it was possible, and that the world was on our side, with the whole phrase never again, and the idea that we would never let that type of persecution happen to Jews specifically ever again. And I think October 7th was a real awakening for all of us to go, oh, right, historically, even well beyond and before Germany, Nazi Germany, the Jews have been persecuted throughout history. It's like a huge part of who we are, and reckoning with, like, oh, we're not any different or really any better off than being Jews escaping Egypt, or any other time period in history where Jews were persecuted. So I think that was a big kind of veil that came off. It was like, wow, this is really a thing, and it's actually still a thing. And thankfully, at least in my community and circle, it's caused all of us to band together more and realize how important our pride and our hearts being open to healing the world and tikkun olam and all of those things. I think it was through October 7th that, like, for me and a lot of people, really showed us that there's still so much work to do and so much to be aware and cautious of.
Have you found that in the Hollywood industry that you've been able to find within that your own community there of those who feel the same way you do or are sort of banded together, that it brought, even like within an industry, our community closer together?
I would say yes and no. I've had both experiences. I've had people who have a lot of Jewish pride in the industry that feel very, really brave, wear their Magen Davids or wear their hostage pins or talk about it. But I've also found a lot of people who don't. And I've worked with a client who literally whispered that she was Jewish and whispered that her father was a Zionist.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, my son's name is Zion. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to whisper that with you. And,
Yeah.
and, you know, I, I hate what is going on in the Middle East. Obviously, I've always hated what's going on in the Middle East because it's always been going on since the minute I ever learned about the Middle East. Um,
Totally. It's
I
been going on
often
thousands of years before us,
That's
right?
right. That's right. And I hate it. Like, my parents were hippies. I'm definitely like a peace seeker in my life. I'm definitely a little bit like flutie hootie hootie. I like believe in the the hope of peace on earth. I love John Lennon, like
Yeah.
I I I pray for peace every single day of my life, and I hate that any group any part of humanity would feel marginalized or persecuted for their faith or their belief system. And all of that to say, I feel pride, and I know how important Israel is, and I also know there's so much suffering for a lot of people there, and it breaks my heart. So I'm
Yeah.
really one of those people that tries to walk the line of, like, being very proud and being very pro, while being empathetic to everybody else that is under horrible rule there, and trapped in their own society that they can't evolve with love and peace in their hearts.
Totally. Totally. And I think for as much like I've heard a few people say in their industries at work, they have to kind of navigate carefully because it can be tricky.
Delicate.
And but on the flip side, I've also heard people say like this shouldn't be tricky. Like we're on, it's good versus evil. And so like there's a mixed bag to all of it.
I
But
mean,
with that, I
I remember I worked on somebody once who said, and I have to be very careful. There are times when I'm verbal, and there's other times where I really have to kind of check myself. Like, I'm not there to be like a political commentator or an educator or any of those things. And so I will speak up when I feel like I can or if it's safe. But I mean, I remember I worked on somebody who said, I mean, the Holocaust. Still, are we still talking about that? Aren't there so many other genocides we could be focusing on? And I was like strangled in that moment. I was like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, well, in my family, we're still talking about the Holocaust because what? And I didn't say anything that day. I just kind of like took a breath and I like let this person be on their high horse talking about what they were talking about. And I was just like, like, I was, I was stunned. I was stunned. I was stunned. And it's like, to me, what's so stunning about it is like, we should be talking about all the genocides. We forever
100%.
and ever and ever. That's the whole point, is that if we forget historically where people have suffered and been persecuted, as we are seeing in different parts of the world and even in, our own backyards, it will just, history is doomed to repeat itself if we don't stare at it constantly and review it
Yeah.
constantly. So
I had a situation recently, not anything about the Holocaust, thankfully, but it was related to October 7th. And I asked somebody if they would do an event for If You Heard What I Heard. And she said, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I don't want it to be seen that I'm siding with Israel. And I was like, I'm telling stories about the Holocaust. Yes, we are a Zionist organization. We believe in Israel and in Israel's right to exist and stand with Israel. But like, what? I was shocked.
I think there's a ton of fear right now. I see it a lot. I see a lot of fear that people are, they're so afraid of being canceled. They're so afraid of saying the wrong thing, which for so many of us, we're like, it's pretty clear what is wrong and what is right here. I don't know why there's any question about it. And I think people are just terrified to say the wrong thing. So they'd rather just say nothing at all. And I think that would be the message I would want people who are active allies and care about being an ally, is to understand how unbelievably meaningful it is to be an ally and to speak up and say something and not take sides or try to solve anything politically, which, you know, I don't, I personally really to me, it's like, it is a biblical issue, right? It's a birthright issue for two gigantic nations that share the same father. So to me,
Yeah.
it's like, this isn't something that we're expecting like some influencer or Hollywood actor to have some ideology that's going to solve the problem, but it's about wishing that people would be less afraid to stand up for their Jewish friends and neighbors and colleagues, and for people that have consistently been persecuted in our lifetime.
Anti-Semitism, that we're looking for help standing up to anti-Semitism, to the hatred towards us. To your point, it has nothing to do, like, we're not political advisors here. We're not geopolitical strategists. None of us
I
will
wish
do
I
that,
did,
but like,
but yeah.
exactly, that's not our job here. But we're a peaceful people that we don't want hate towards us. We don't want hate towards anybody else. I mean, at least everyone I know who's Jewish doesn't want hate towards anybody else. So having allies, like that's, I think for me anyway, that's where it's so meaningful to have allies. It's to stand up against the hate. It's, you know, how they say when you're being bullied in school, you just need one other person to stand up with you, and then the bullying stops, or the other kids like don't gang up, right? It's kind of like that. We need that one. Where's that one person that's going to stand with us? And thankfully we do. I think Van Jones has been phenomenal.
He's so beautiful. Everything he says is just like, yes, yes, he's got it. More people need to hear that and pay attention to that. He's been incredible,
I mean,
incredible.
he is just unabashedly like, just I'm with my Jewish friends.
Yeah,
And it makes a world of difference. Like, I don't know if he realizes what a difference it truly makes.
yeah, agreed,
He's amazing. Yeah.
agreed.
And also, I have to say, Sarah Foster, absolutely incredible.
Mm.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
That's my
amazing.
personal opinion. But
Yeah, I mean, and
I don't know.
really anyone who's willing to like retweet or reshare or say I stand with my Jewish friends, anyone, I mean, like we won't even say his name, but the denounced rapper who sent
Yeah.
all the people to his website to buy
Yeah.
his Nazi shirt. It's like, what is the statistic? Like he has how many more followers than all the Jews in the world that exist? It's like some
Yeah. It's,
insane.
I think it's like 10 times or no, 30 times the.
It's something crazy. We could Google it, but it's just like
Yeah.
the the amount of followers that so many people have. I don't think. I think it would be amazing if they could push through the parts of them that are afraid of being canceled, afraid of saying the wrong thing, would be more inclined to just lean into who they know and what they know to be true about, like I said, their friends and neighbors and colleagues, and just say like, I stand with I stand with peaceful. You could even say I stand with peaceful Jews. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can even
Or
qualify
I
it.
stand for peace
Yeah,
for
I
all,
stand for peace
right?
for
Like,
all. Exactly.
but I even think, like, specifically with the Holocaust, like, we did a campaign, a social media campaign that you were such a wonderful part of a few years ago, where we said, "Will you be my witness?" Because, like, for Holocaust survivors, they just want to know that their stories are going to live on when they're not here. So, from that perspective, you posted and asked, "Who will be my witness?" And we had so many wonderful responses from your specific community, Molly, like,
Mm.
beautiful reshares and reposts from so many of your friends who are not Jewish that took a stand to say, I will remember your father's story. I will remember your grandparents' story. Like that to me was so beautiful. And I'm not going to mention the name of this person, but I told you about this. I ran into one of your friends not long after. And I said, thank you so much for resharing. And like I had introduced myself and said that we were friends. And this friend of yours who is not Jewish just immediately was like talking to somebody else and immediately started recounting the story of what your grandparents went through. Like she knew it like it was her own. And it was like so meaningful to see that from somebody who is not Jewish, but just is a friend that cares about you. It was really special.
That's really beautiful. Yeah.
It was, please give that friend a big hug from me.
Yeah, yeah. I feel, it's I feel really lucky, I have always been, my like social media platform or whatever is pretty fluffy. It's about beauty and well-being and occasionally some personal family photos and stuff. So I don't use my platform as a place to necessarily share all of my views or ideologies about anything unless it has to do with lipstick. That's where you'll get like a pretty
Yeah.
broad range of my feelings. But I have definitely, I wouldn't say it's been 100%, but when I have used my platform to share about our work with the organization or just Holocaust Remembrance Day or something about my parents or about being Jewish or anything, I've been really fortunate that I don't get a lot of hate and anti-Semitic responses. Of course I get some, which
Yeah.
I guess is sad in and of itself, that I'm like okay with some, that I
Oh,
consider myself lucky that I only get some versus other people who get a ton. But I do feel very held by my entertainment community that I work with and my social media community. For the most part, I would say people are empathetic and caring about my lineage and my story. And the people that make those comments, like the one I said before about, really, we're still talking about the Holocaust, those are few and far between. But I've definitely noticed that since October 7th, there is much more like, ugh, like everyone is just afraid to say anything. And, it's hard. It's hard to witness.
I think it's been hard for us as a Holocaust organization because you should never be afraid to talk about the Holocaust. There's nothing there that would warrant being afraid to talk about it. Like 6 million Jews were murdered for no other reason than they were Jewish. Where like that's it. Like just say I stand with my Jewish friends and neighbors. You
Right.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of us, it just feels like we're, isn't it obvious that just like we are all standing up for other people that are feeling persecuted or marginalized, or are persecuted and marginalized, not feeling it, but are, I wouldn't think twice about standing up and saying that, or speaking out for them. But I mean, it gets tricky. I mean, I understand. I also have empathy that it shouldn't be tricky, and at the same time, it is tricky for people who maybe don't have the same relationship to the history of the trauma, right? They have a harder
Yeah.
time relating or understanding why it's so important. And I do
Yeah.
have empathy for that.
But to your point earlier, like you said, you come to my page, you get lipstick tutorials and like what's the best, like I got my little lip gloss here.
Oh,
Like,
what is that lip gloss? That looks cute.
this one I think is Westman Atelier.
Oh, it's so pretty. Yeah, I love
I
it.
know. Do we like Westman Atelier? I love
Very
their
much,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
Very much.
What's like the cool, we'll veer off for a second, but what's like the cool new makeup on the block that we all need to pay attention to?
Oh, I really like this brand called Violette French, or it's
Ooh.
yeah, it's an arm's length away, but she does these really beautiful balms, and she has these really pretty cream eyeshadows, and little independent business.
Ooh, based here in LA.
No, I think she's based out of Paris.
So cool. See, I'm
Violette
like the
FR.
Violette FR. Okay, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to look it up. I'm
Hmm.
telling you, I'm like, did you ever see My Big Fat Greek Wedding? And you know how the dad is like, show me the Greek word and I will show you, or like, show me an English word, I'll show you like the Greek
Can,
connection.
can you believe
I'm
I've
like,
never seen that movie?
okay, Molly,
I
stop.
know, I know, I know. I've never seen My Cousin
Stop.
Vinny either.
No, no.
I
Okay.
know.
I'm sorry. I think it might need to be a movie marathon weekend for you.
I need to check it out.
Yeah. Maybe our listeners will chime in with other movies that
Yes, please.
need to be watched.
I'll take all the recommendations.
Well,
Anyway,
anyway,
you
so
were saying.
in my big fat Greek wedding, the dad says, "Give me an English word and I will show you the Greek connection." I've become like the show me the brand and I will show you the connection to its Jewish roots
Oh my
in
God,
some
that's hilarious.
way, shape, or form.
I love it. I love it. That's like my
That should
mom.
be a
And
TV
my
show.
mom will always be like, "Did you know that so and so's Jewish? Like she's the Jewish meter of like." I'm like, "Oh no, I didn't know that."
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of your parents, what was your dad's reaction to both your interview and seeing Vivian's interview?
Oh wow, he was really moved. He was really moved by Viv's, because
I
Viv
mean,
was
but he must have
speaking
moved by
about him.
yours too.
He was moved by mine for sure, but he was really moved by Viv's.
Oh,
I think it
yeah, because
really. I think hearing her talk about it with such deep passion, empathy, and knowledge, I think really, for him, seeing her talk about it informed that idea of never again and passing it on to generation, and which is such a Jewish thing anyway. I mean, the whole oral law of the Torah is passed down through verbal communication, right? And so it's such a intrinsic part of being Jewish is retelling our stories. And so I think to hear his granddaughter retell his story with such poise and grace and passion was really just really moved him. He was moved to tears.
Honestly, it means a lot for us as an organization because for the majority of our interviewees, they don't have grandparents around anymore that can respond to this work. So to be able to have your dad be able to respond to knowing that his grandchildren are going to continue on the story and make sure it doesn't get lost is really incredible.
Yeah, it was a big deal for him for sure.
Well, it's a big deal for us that you guys are all a part of our organization. And he said some wonderful words at our Matisyahu concert in May of last year in LA, and your family came on stage. I still can't believe you were out of town for that.
I can't believe I missed it.
It was such a special night. It was
I
so
know.
cool to
They
have your
loved it.
kids on stage with
They
your
loved
dad.
it. Amazing.
It was so fun. Like at one point, because Etta is your youngest, and how old was she then? Like 13 or 14?
Was
Maybe
that 2 years
13.
ago at this point?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was last year. So
So she was 14.
14. At one point, I looked over at her and the smile on her face was just priceless, just like the joy. And I just looked at her and I was like, this is our future generation.
Yeah.
You know, like this, it made me tenfold proud to be Jewish to see the look on her face,
Yeah.
having such a great night of Jewish joy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was really special. It was really, and Vivian, your amazing daughter, has been stepping up to help us with editing.
She's so talented. She loves editing, and she loves editing for you so much.
Oh, we love working with her. She's getting accolades all over the place from our senior editors on the team.
Awesome.
She's definitely blowing everyone away. So I hope that can continue for as long as she wants. And hopefully we'll be able to chat with her at some point and get her perspective too.
Oh yeah.
on all of
She's
this.
next in line. She's excited about it.
She is next in line. Absolutely. What do you hope that everyone who listens to your interview, though, about you telling your grandparents' story, what do you want people to walk away with?
That's such a good question. I think I would just want people to be open to our history and our lineage and value it. And maybe tell somebody else to listen or to find the story and make it a part of their personal education. I feel like I was really grateful with the whole Black Lives Matter movement to learn more about systemic racism in America. Being a white woman, I was grateful for all the things I could read and all the interviews I could watch, and I got smarter. I got more aware, more conscious, more empathetic, I just got smarter. And I would love to see people relate to our stories in the same way of like learning about our history and why we care about the things that we care about.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody recently who said, like, listening to these interviews is almost like you're making a new friend. And I really hope that that's what it is. That, like, even if you don't know us as grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, that through this, you've made a new friend, you know?
I love that.
Yeah, it was so beautiful, this person said. Yeah, so with that, I always like to end on like a fun and light note. So is there like a tradition or something that you guys do today in your family that like just brings you joy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably the tradition that brings me the most joy is Shabbat. Like when we're all
Love
together.
Shabbat.
Yeah, when we're all together and we're singing and we're eating and we're breaking bread together and everyone, goes around and makes their prayer over the wine and all of that stuff. I like, to me, that feels, it's the best of what being Jewish is, because there's some like religious element to it in observing it, but then there's also so much tradition being together for that every week and sort of celebrating the work that we've done all week and that we all deserve rest and breath from our grind, and it brings community and family together. And so it's always my favorite when I get to really tap into that with them specifically.
And by the way, like a tradition that we've been doing as Jews for what, thousands and thousands of years,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
so I'd say that's a pretty strong tradition that survived the Holocaust.
Okay, yeah. I don't, yeah. His parents weren't very religious. They were kind of those Jews that came out of it not feeling super identified. So that is also kind of what makes my father and his journey so beautiful, is that he, even through that sort of, we're going to be quiet about being Jews because of where we've come from, he actually ended up becoming really loud about being Jewish, which is a major thing that survived the Holocaust.
1000%. And your kids are such amazing, proud Jews. You know, they are unbelievable.
They're pretty great. I have to agree
Yeah.
with you.
I
I have to
mean,
agree.
they are really amazing. And it's funny because Zion spoke at the very first Sunset Stories that we had, and I cannot tell you how many people came up to me after he spoke and said, "I hope my kids turn out to be just like him." Like,
So
and
many
like
people still come up to me. They'll be like, "I met you at," and if you heard what I heard, your son spoke, and I'm like, "Oh yeah." They're like, "He's amazing." I'm like, "Oh yeah."
he
He
is amazing.
he is
Like,
he is amazing, and he also feels very close to my dad. They have some really amazing characteristics that are in common. And yeah, I do feel very proud that I'm grateful that their dad and myself made raising them in a Jewish home a priority and getting them a Jewish education. I I knew it was important and a good idea, but now that I have adult kids, I really am so grateful that we made that choice and sacrifice in our lives for them, because it's just so important to have a strong Jewish identity. I see it now more than ever.
yeah. Yeah, that one in particular, yeah, people are still saying how what an incredible job Zion did at that
Yeah,
event. So,
he's really good at public speaking. He's really good
I
at
mean,
it.
yeah, but I like half of the audience has little kids. So they're looking at this proud young Jewish man and like, how do I raise my kid to be as proud to be Jewish, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's Thank God, by
Thank
the
God.
grace of God. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It
Yeah.
really is. We
Well,
got
we're so proud to have you, your dad, your kids as a part of our organization. You bring so much light and joy to every single one of our events, every effort that we put forth. For me, I'm constantly thinking about you guys because your family is just such a light in our organization and to your point in the world. So
Thank you,
thank you,
Carolyn.
Molly.
Love being with you. Thank you so much for having
Same.
me.